to organize such events at our university, at least enriching our research papers and our publications, and also our postgraduate study students getting together with the experts, diplomats, and let's say looking to the frontiers and talk about and transferring information. This is the number one issue. The second one, also letting our and the other postgraduate students in Ankara networking with the practitioners, academics, and all of them. So this is the idea of academic discussion environment. Thanks God, we reached a point and then we can organize a hybrid event. Thanks to the German Marshall Fund and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, we have lots of partnerships, and thanks to our institution TEPAV hosting with a high hygienic standards to our activity. I just want to share that I am so happy to get together and then beginning our discussion. And on hybrid event on the Zoom, we have other guests. Please accept my best wishes to you. And then first come, first register, first comes base. Hybrid activities are ongoing in future. And please do not hesitate as you get emails from us. For any invitation, register yourself in advance. So they serve lots of good food and also beverage here. So it is also good to get together with the friends here with the hygiene standards. For the event, I just want to remind you, if you eat something or if you need to say something, you can take out your mask. Other than, please keep your masks are on your mouth, just for not hurting or violates others' hygiene standards. I just want to thank again and let the games begin. So Niels, floor is yours. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler Haldun Bey. Herkese merhaba. My name is Niels Lange from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Turkey. I'd like to all welcome you again, and special welcome and very happy to welcome Professor Pinar İpek as our host today, Associate Professor for International Relations and Politics at TUBB University, Ambassador Stefan Herström, the Swedish Ambassador to Turkey, and Ambassador İlhan Tu, Director General for Energy and Environment at the Turkish MFA. Before we start, finally, I'd like to point out why this event is particularly relevant right now. In this year's Transatlantic Trends Survey 21, for the first time ever, non-traditional security threats ranked highest among the respondents in all countries as the biggest security threats that they think their countries are facing. The numbers for Turkey were especially high. And a lot of countries saw this year that there are climate disasters, floods, wildfires, earthquakes all around the world, also especially in the countries of the Transatlantic Alliance. We saw that a vast majority of the respondents believe also that their countries should do more to combat climate change. And again, Turkey said, in Turkey, 83% of the respondents said they want their country to do much more. We have seen this year that Turkey has taken important steps to combat climate change and is increasingly supporting the green transition of its economy. It aims to be part of the European Green Deal, which will have major impact on the whole geopolitical environment in and around Europe. And it's, for those of you who don't know, the overarching aim is to make Europe the first climate neutral continent until 2050. The deal has the potential to revolutionize the trade relations between Europe and its partners, and first and foremost, obviously also Turkey, which is already bound to the European Union through the framework of the Customs Union. Last week at the United Nations, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said, "This crisis," referring to the climate crisis, "can only be managed through global cooperation. For this, we must not leave anyone behind and must ensure fair burden sharing." I'm very happy now that we can talk about this very timely topic just ahead of the COP26, which is happening in November in Glasgow. And I'm very delighted to have our distinguished participants on the stage. Thank you very much. And now I would like to welcome Özgür Bey from GMF, who will dwell a little bit more on the findings of this year's survey. Thank you, Özgür.
Well, it's been less than a year since Niels came to Turkey, and he can already pronounce my name. He's still working on my last name, I think. My name is Özgür Hisarcıklı. I'm the Ankara Office Director at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you very much, all, for being with us today. It might be a new experience after the pandemic. For some of you, it's certainly a new experience for us. You know, the last time we organized a in-person meeting, it was like in another era that we don't really remember anymore. So it's an exciting day for all of us. As my colleagues mentioned, the starting point of this event is the Transatlantic Trends survey that GMF now conducts every year. This year, we were able to conduct the survey in 11 countries with the partnership of the Bertelsmann Stiftung. But the survey in Turkey was conducted thanks to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, who became our partner in Turkey. I will give you a few snapshots from the survey, but if you would like to see the whole survey and its analysis, I encourage you to Google Transatlantic Trends 2020-2021 so that you can see the whole results. For your information, the following panel is not on the Transatlantic Trends survey, but only on the climate dimension. So if you have any questions on the survey, please do ask them to me after I share my snapshots. So one of the questions in the survey was, which country, which actor is the most influential in global affairs? To this question, the United States came first with 63%, meaning that 63% of the respondents said the United States is the most influential actor at the world stage, followed by China with 17% and the European Union by 14%. When we zoomed into the European Union and asking the question, which actor within the European Union do you think is the most influential in world affairs? Germany actually came first with 45%, and 25% said the United Kingdom. 14% said Turkey. I'm surprised it's 14%. That Turkey is the leading actor in Europe is an undisputable fact. But anyway, so the survey says 14%, and then France came with 6%. Another question we asked was, who is the most reliable partner of your country? Now, in Turkey's case, Germany, Sweden, and Canada topped the rank. 54% for Germany, 53% for Sweden, and 52% for Canada. I think these results are the same, as the difference is within the margin of error. And as you know, we're organizing this with a German partner, and we have the Swedish ambassador speaking to us, but it's a coincidence. Another question we asked was, what is the most important problem that the transatlantic community needs to work on? In Turkey, with 22% global health, topped the rank. This was not very surprising to us, given that, as Niels also has said, non-security related threats are now more relevant than security related threats in most of the world. It doesn't mean that security related threats are going away, but we have these new challenges to deal with as well. So I would actually like to come to environment now. Now, one interesting aspect is, among all countries that were included in the survey, the Turkish public was the most likely to attribute importance to the United Nations on any given issue. For example, 65% of the Turkish respondents said that the UN should work more on global peace and security. 67% said it should work more on human rights, etc., etc. Now, on climate change, 61% of the respondents in Turkey, 61, said that the United Nations should do more on climate change. This was the highest score in all of the countries that were surveyed. But we did not only ask about the United Nations, we asked another question. Should your own government do more, less, or the same against climate change? Again, actually, Turkey topped the rank. 83% of the Turkish respondents said that the Turkish government should do more on climate change. So this survey, the field study, was conducted during spring. So the forest fires had not taken place yet. The historical high temperatures had not been witnessed yet. The floods had not been witnessed yet. And not only in Turkey, the flood in Germany had not happened. The wildfires around the globe had not happened, but already we see a Turkish public that gives a lot of importance to climate issues. Therefore, while presenting you the Transatlantic Trends survey results, we wanted to highlight the very striking results on climate. It is now apparent that the Turkish public expects the international community to do more against climate change and expects the Turkish government to do more against climate change. And I think that it's very meaningful. I wish our survey played a role in Turkey's decision to ratify the climate agreement, but we know that it was in the making anyway. But I think it's a happy coincidence that the two came together. So if you have any questions on the survey, I'll be happy to respond. Otherwise, we can move on to the panel on climate and environment. Any questions? There seems not. So Pınar, the floor is yours. And before I hand over the microphone, this is always what I forget, expressing my gratitude. I should do that more often, also including in my private life, I guess. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. Thanks to the two ambassadors for agreeing to speak. Thanks to our partner organizations, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung and the TOBB University. Thanks to our host, TEPA, for hosting us today. And our colleague and friend Shaban, he should be somewhere in the room. He is not taking the podium today, but he actually did a lot of work to make this happen. Thank you, Shaban.
Thank you, Özgür Bey. As all the introductory remarks have highlighted, today we have two distinguished speakers. His Excellency Stöder from Embassy of Sweden in Ankara, and His Excellency İlhan Tu from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. So without further delaying the talks, I would like to invite kindly two distinguished speakers to the podium. Thank you. We will collect the questions and if any comments later. Before starting, I would like to add our gratitude also to our students in our university assisting us for organizing this event and promoting. Thank you very much. So we would like to start first with Mr. Tu, His Excellency from Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He would give his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I allowed to take off my mask?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this event, which I also feel privileged because, as I heard, it's the first hybrid event that took place in a while. If you allow me, I would like to make brief remarks about, in general, the Turkish policy vis-à-vis the climate change and what we have done so far. And after that, I'm open to a free-flowing discussion. And so without further ado, I will begin. While the Earth embraces millions of living species on its soil, the only thing that it's expecting from the mankind is to respect this resources. But unfortunately, mankind has recklessly used the Earth's resources in search of progress and development, which it pursued throughout history. At the end of this process, which lasted for centuries, we are now facing threats entirely caused by mankind outside nature's own balance. The problems, which we may regroup under headings such as climate change, air pollution, water and food security, loss of biodiversity, have reached an extent that will steer the future of humanity into uncertainty. Among these headings, climate change is one we should particularly focus on, as beyond being an environmental problem, it leads to irreparable consequences. Climate change has become a main and urgent problem of humanity. This year proved this fact once again with all the wildfires, droughts, floods all around the world. Now we all know that no one is immune from the adverse effects of climate change. The only way to combat this challenge is to act together and establish close cooperation globally in a sincere manner. I would like to highlight that Turkey is fully aware of the urgency of climate crisis. We are located in the Mediterranean basin that has become one of the main climate change hotspots in the world, according to the IPCC's recent report. Therefore, like in other Mediterranean countries, in 2021, Turkey had to struggle with extreme weather events related to climate change, especially disasters such as floods and fires. Although Turkey's historical responsibility for the global greenhouse emissions is very limited, which is less than 1%, we are one of the countries paying the price for it. In this regard, developed countries should support developing countries with adequate financial and technical support for their climate action, as countries are not able to fight against climate change on equal terms. As a developing country with having negligible historical responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions, Turkey actually contributes to the climate action efforts in an active way. In the last 5 years only, almost $17 billion investment was made in renewables in Turkey. As a result, Turkey is currently ranking 5th in Europe and 12th in the world in terms of renewable installed capacity. The share of renewable resources in our installed capacity in electricity generation is currently around 53%. We are also a leading country in the world in terms of geothermal energy. Turkey is among the top 5 countries in the world which use geothermal energy for electricity generation. We are 4th in the world and number 1 in Europe in this regard. We are also conducting many significant environmental projects such as Zero Waste and Breath for the Future campaign. Within the context of Zero Waste project, we aim to increase the recycling rate of waste to 60% by 2035. In the last 18 years, we have increased our forest areas from 20.8 million hectares to 23 million hectares by planting 5.2 billion seedlings. And we have confirmed this number this morning from the Ministry of Agriculture. I would like to emphasize that we attach great importance to combating climate change. As a testimony to this understanding, as mentioned earlier, at the 76th General Assembly of the United Nations, our president declared that we plan to present the Paris Climate Agreement for approval to our assembly in October, within the framework of our nationally determined contribution statement and in conformity with the positive states which will be taken. We envisage to complete the ratification process of the agreement before COP26, which is just 1 month shy from today. Our president also announced on just 3 days ago, on 27th of September, that Turkey will take a new step with regards to green development revolution. Pursuant to the ratification of the Paris Agreement, our concerned institutions will prepare and will implement their action plans in accordance with our new net zero emission target of 2053. On the other hand, as an EU candidate country and a customs union partner, Turkey has already taken important steps to align with the European Green Deal and adopted Turkey's Green Deal Action Plan. It constitutes a comprehensive roadmap for transition to a more sustainable and greener economy in Turkey. Before I end my remarks, I would like to underline that we are all on the same boat on the fight against climate change. Therefore, we can only win this race by acting together. Thank you very much.
His Excellency too, thank you very much for your remarks. As he highlighted, I think that's a good ending to say we are on the same boat. So later maybe we can discuss this further as academically, the students are here as a collective action problem in addition to cooperation in international relations. So His Excellency Hirsch, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It feels great to be able to address such a crucially important global threat in this context when we see the world and certainly these premises coming to life again after the pandemic. I switched on CNN yesterday morning, and suddenly I saw the Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg on the screen. Pure coincidence, but she was there. She conveyed a very harsh message to decision makers and officials all over the world. She quoted some of our favorite messages and catchwords, and said something like this: this is just words, green recovery, blah, blah, blah, she said. Build back better, blah, blah, blah, it's just words. I both agree and disagree with her. I agree because we haven't done enough. None of us. We haven't done even close to enough to address, to combat the climate crisis with all the consequences that Ambassador Tu already touched upon. And the price we are paying is visible more or less everywhere. Here in Turkey, several serious indications, the recent forest fires, floods, the mucilage in the Marmara Sea. The climate panel report from August was frightening, to say the least. The Secretary General of the United Nations said this is code red for humanity. We are on the path to something dramatically worse than the Paris Agreement is aiming for sure. Not 1.5 degrees, which is the target, maybe 2.7 degrees, maybe more. And science shows that time is running out. Restoring our relationship with the biosphere through taking climate action, through halting biodiversity loss, is a crucially urgent task for all humanity. So I agree with Greta. But at the same time, words do matter. They change mindsets, attitudes, behavior. The words of young climate activists matter if and when they are listened to by decision makers. We've seen, as Özgür Bey presented here, we've seen in the Transatlantic Trends that 68% of all respondents think their governments should do more. And in democracies, such figures really make a difference. And Turkey had the highest share, as we heard, 83%. And change is also happening. Action is taken. Private sector, very much in the driver's seat, very much because they see customers changing their preferences. Customers not wanting to buy products that are devastating for climate, but demanding change from the producers. And they see also, private sector again, private companies, they see the political framework changing, and they see that green solutions are becoming business opportunities rather than threats. And they realize that they need to be in the forefront rather than at the back seat, because then eventually they will lose when the world is changing. And the EU Green Deal, I think, is a great example of this change in the overall political framework. The opposite is certainly the Trump policy previously we experienced. Luckily, the US has changed. And hopefully we are entering a period now where multilateral action, us acting together as a global community, will not only be recognized, but also delivering results. COP26, as Ambassador referred to, is a coming milestone. And next year, Sweden will host the so-called Stockholm Plus 50 conference, restoring our relationship with nature. I'm old enough, it's terrible to say, but I'm old enough to remember Stockholm Plus 0, meaning 1972. The first UN environmental conference in Stockholm was a milestone in many ways, triggered the creation of UNEP and changed the direction of very much of this action. Now we're having Stockholm Plus 50, taking stock and trying to move forward. And obviously, we all very much welcome the message recently from President Erdogan that the Paris Agreement now will be sent to the Turkish parliament for ratification. Another piece of good news, the Chinese decision not to invest in coal-fired power plants outside China anymore. So what's next? Well, countries need to significantly increase their nationally determined contributions, because what we have pledged, all of us, isn't enough. And we must put in place measures leading to those reductions. The EU increased its target 2030 from 40% to 55% reduction. And of course, much actions have been presented also, like in the Green Deal, to make these targets also becoming reality. In our opinion, as Sweden, we think that this should be valid, this increased target should be valid not only for the EU as a whole, us 27, but also for every single member state. And we believe climate neutrality 2050 isn't enough. The EU should aim for negative emissions thereafter. Secondly, on measures, our experience, carbon pricing is a key tool for reductions. We've seen that through the EU emissions trading system, which has become significantly more effective over time. We've seen that in Sweden, where we introduced a carbon dioxide tax already in 1991 as part of a huge overall tax reform. So, and polluters should be forced to pay, because then they simply have strong financial incentives to change. And then we'll see also financial flows being redirected towards climate-friendly investments. One fascinating example now, I mean, it's not coming in large scale anytime soon, but the fossil-free steel production now starting in Sweden as a major sort of breakthrough intellectually and conceptually. Eventually this will be a reality also in a larger scale. Overall, we have, since 1990, we have reduced the emissions with 27%, while the economy has grown with 85%. So it's possible to break this previous linkage between economic growth and increased emissions. And yes, I mean, we're a country that have contributed more to the global warming than poorer countries, developing countries. So yes, we should really be acting more rapidly, not least for that reason. Thirdly, we need to phase out fossil fuels sooner rather than later. And the preconditions for this are improving, not least because renewables like solar and wind has become so much cheaper. In Sweden, solar cells has become 90% cheaper in the last 10 years. I remember when I was younger than I'm now, that people said, well, you know, solar cells, that's in the future, it's expensive, it won't happen anytime soon. Well, it's happening here and now. And there's a huge potential literally in energy efficiency. Fourthly, we need to consider the relatively heavier burden that global warming is placing all over the world on vulnerable groups. We need to see and acknowledge that women and men often are affected differently, and that women often are crucially important actors in the fight against the devastating consequences. Not certainly sometimes being victims, but also need to be seen, recognized as actors for change. And finally, all countries need to mainstream climate action into national budgetary and planning processes. The developed world must deliver on its commitment to provide financing, according to the goal, $100 billion per year. Sweden and the EU stand by this pledge, but much greater resources are needed to finance the transition to climate smart societies. And Sweden is now the world largest donor per capita to several multilateral climate funds, including the Green Climate Fund. So the total sum is something around 600 million euros per year. And actually, government today added 100 to those 600 million euros, so 700 in total. Then, as the last word on the climate, the political climate around the fight against climate change and global warming. We have a climate policy framework, might sound a bit dull and technical, but it includes a climate law and sort of mechanisms to make things happen. And this was enacted 2018, including goals like zero net emissions of greenhouse gases 2045 to become the world's first fossil-free welfare state. But it also, and that's important, it also includes a mechanism where an independent council, independent outside experts, observers, actors, is put in place to scrutinize the government, what's actually done. And it's been quite critical. They have been critical, saying that, well, the ambitions are too low, the measures put in place are not up to standards. And this kind of pressure is useful, and the same goes for the environmental civil society movement, which also, as we know, influences public awareness and make people change their individual behavior in the direction of zero waste, recycling, to reduce food waste, to adapt their traveling and whatever. Additionally, we have seen interesting investigative articles in our independent media on the quality of the decision-making processes. Investigative journalists scrutinizing, okay, how were these targets formulated? What happened behind the scenes? And this is the reality. Free debate. And this openness for scrutiny, this freedom of media, this pressure from environmental activists in a free civil society, these checks and balances are crucial. They are crucial for creating well-functioning democratic societies, but also to make sure that the best decisions are made for our global future, because there is no planet B. In that sense, Greta Thunberg certainly is right. I agree with her. More needs to be done. There is no planet B. Thank you.
Thank you for this very comprehensive and tight talk. So we are now ready for questions and comments, but as a moderator, let me take the luxury of being here and ask one question for each distinguished speaker. If I may, I would like to start with Mr. Ambassador Herrström. You highlighted Sweden's actually highest role as being the highest EU member for funding green initiatives. 600 million used to be, it's just increased to 700 million. So I wonder, because as Özgür Bey in the beginning have emphasized, Sweden and other Scandinavian countries have very positive image in Turkish public. What were the difficulties of Sweden in pushing towards more green environmental policy? Because as we know, heavy industry, some trading groups that needs to consume fossil fuel are, slow at least for climate reaction change. So what were the lessons learned? It would be, I think, useful to enhance the discussion if you can share some experiences of Sweden. Thank you.
Well, on just one comment on the financing. It's the figure I used was the highest per capita. It's not the highest overall, but it's the highest, though globally the highest per capita. We need to do more, even beyond that. But I mean, I would say the transport sector is overall a very challenging sector. If you look at industry, there was an initiative taken taken by government to mobilize the private sector. It's called Fossil Free Sweden, and there have been action plans developed jointly, private and public sector, to address the various sectors in industry, and that has worked surprisingly well. But I think to transform, and that didn't work well in the beginning, for sure. I mean, of course, you had a lot of messaging from private sector. If you go back sort of 20, 30 years, well, the high costs, and we can't afford, and we're not competitive, and then production will move to other countries. What's happened now, and that's an experience, is that the private sector has become very much a leader, because they recognize that there are business opportunities in this, and there are business dangers, business threats. If you try to sort of stick to old technologies, which are increasingly regarded as brown, because you rapidly lose the confidence of customers, and you will be out of touch also with the developments by the EU Green Deal and certainly the Swedish policy. On transport, I think in all countries you have the critical voices when you try to increase the prices on petrol, diesel. So I mean, you definitely need to make sure, not as some countries still do, to subsidize fossil fuels. I mean, I think that's really to try to protect people financially by subsidizing fossil fuel. That's going in the totally wrong direction. But you must, of course, make sure that you have a social safety net, and that you are aware and try to address the needs of areas. I mean, Sweden is a large country with a small population, and in some areas there are huge distances, and you need to make sure that these parts of the country are not feeling that they are overtaxed without getting anything out of it. But having said that, you need the carbon pricing is essential, and that's a positive experience from us. It has helped us to reduce our carbon footprint, and the kind of incentives created. There's one system created where you need to pay a bit extra if you buy a more environmentally dangerous car, and you get a subsidy if you buy an electricity car, for instance. But those incentives, they work.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I think we can take questions and comments from the floor. Yeah, Özgür Bey would like to, I think, add something, or from the Zoom.
I can actually wait. I have one question to Ambassador each, but I think we should give the opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, I thought you may like to add something. Yes, I see one of our PhD students. Please, each person, if they raise hand, introduce yourself, your name and your affiliation by your institution, university, organization, firm, whatever. Thank you.
Speak loudly. Okay, this is Selim Yıldırım. I am a PhD student in Top Economy and Technology University. It's now PhD student, but hopefully will be PhD candidate in several months. Well, I have a question for all audience and the speakers. So we have been given some data just before the panel, and they were quite informative and sort of a snapshot over the Turkish society, actually. But then I have checked my data, which is taken from the World Value Survey, sort of valid data, actually. And it was actually about the Mediterranean basin countries and their societies are asked the question whether your government should protect the environment or sustain or provide economic growth. So the Turkey has the lowest score, and probably the ratio was the 56 for economic growth and 42 favor for the environment. So what do you think about the Turkish economic standards, and how do you think the Turkish state, Turkish government would insist or would process the environmental protection policies under this kind of economic crisis? How do you think the Turkish government insists its society? That's my question.
I guess your question is to Ambassador too, or also Mr. Ambassador? Okay, but let me just, put a little skeptic note on it. Each survey may ask questions differently. Indeed, the question you quoted had two comparative choices, whereas in the GMF survey, they just limited to whether you want to have your government to have more action or not. So it wasn't compared to a second choice of preference. Do you prefer more action for climate or more preference for economic growth? You see, So according to actually, I teach research methods, the question that you cited is more biased because it pushes towards a preference. If they were asked separately, then I think it would be more subjective in terms of a snapshot. But shall we collect some questions and then continue? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Pelin. I'm working as an economic policy advisor at Dutch Embassy. So thank you very much for nice speeches. I have two questions, one for Ambassador Hellström and one for Ambassador Tu. So Mr. Hellström, what are the current or potential fields of collaboration between Sweden and Turkey in terms of green transformation? And for Mr. Tu, I would like to ask you about the recent updates on the emission trading system in Turkey. So we hear that there are some studies going on, and also in the Green Action Plan. Also, it is stated that one of the objectives are to assess the possible consequences of such a system in Turkey. But will it be established soon? So I'll be very happy to hear it from you as well. Thank you very much.
Sorry, please, the gentleman at the back seat.
Hello, my name is Berat Kamili. I'm a social entrepreneur and I've been working on climate change. Yes, Greta said blah blah to all policies, but at the same time, Keynes said that in the long term we are all dead. There is Green Deal, there is other policies, but maybe in 50 years we will not be here. What do you think about the short-term policies of the European Union and Turkey? Do you think that in the short term we will be able to achieve climate neutral policies? And do you think that there is a concrete actions regarding the short-term plan? And we saw also from the pandemic that even the mobility stopped, only 5% of carbon dioxide dropped in the world. So even if we stay home, carbon dioxide is already in the air. What will be the short-term policies, both about the Turkey and the European Union, not talking about the Green Deal and the future policies? Thanks.
Okay, I think we collected 3 questions, so we can start from Ambassador Tu and then continue with Ambassador.
Well, instead of answering one by one, I would, with your permission, just
of course, sir.
Try to cover both, 3 questions at the same time. Well, as you know, Turkey is a EU candidate country and a customs union partner. And Turkey is also an indispensable actor in Europe's green transition process. Needless to say that Turkey and EU has had a very strong economic and commercial ties for a very long time. Well, following its announcement, Turkey has taken rapid steps to align with the European Green Deal. And on July 2021, we published Turkey's Green Deal Action Plan, comprising 81 actions and 32 objectives under 9 priority headings. It constitutes a comprehensive roadmap for transition to a more sustainable and greener economy in Turkey. We believe that Turkey's fast adaptation to the Green Deal will reinforce Turkey's position in the global supply chains, increase Turkey's international competitiveness, and enhance economic integration with the EU. There is currently a focus, of course, on net zero pledges all around the world. And there's an assumption that these targets will avert climate change. There's a general problem that these pledges usually lack policy detail and delivery mechanisms. First and foremost, we as Turkey believe that it is compulsory for countries with historic responsibility for climate change to take responsibility. What I mean here is that whoever has done the most damage to nature, to our atmosphere, our water, our soil, and whoever has wildly exploited the natural resources should also make the greatest contribution in the fight against climate change. This is our basic principle. And the Green Fund, the pledges were made for $100 billion, as you all know. But at the moment, as far as I know, those pledges only have materialized to around $9 billion US dollars. First of all, billions are not enough. We have to talk trillions if we want to avert climate change and to be serious about this. During the pandemic, the governments have mobilized approximately $15 trillion to support their economies. So that means that you can actually spend trillions when you want to, but when you look, you only see that there's $9 billion in the Green Climate Fund. According to the International Energy Agency, there was a report published by the agency that for energy transformation, there's a need for investment of $45.5 trillion annually. So, I mean, this is just a ballpark calculation that I'm doing. If there's, I mean, Turkey's historic responsibility is around 1% in the climate. So that means if you take 1% of this amount, which is 45.5 trillion annually, we need approximately around $45 billion annually for adaptation and mitigation combined. That's why it's very urgent. I mean, even for Turkey to get assistance in order to fight against the climate change. Just think about the other countries, the least developed countries. I mean, they need more support from the developed world. I mean, in a nutshell, this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
If I may start with the last question, what should be done now, short term? Well, first of all of our countries' governments need to agree in Glasgow on higher ambitions and the necessary tools to reach. Exactly as the ambassador said, I mean, it's not enough to raise ambitions. You need to have policies and actions to support that. And I know I participated to some extent in the previous COP in Warsaw, 2013, and there's a lot of ongoing negotiations during these kind of conferences where important decisions can be made or may be brushed off the table. So, and whether good decisions are taken or bad decisions are taken or no decisions are taken, that's up to decision makers, government. And Glasgow is a major opportunity now to move forward. So that's very short term, that's in November. If we see action taken there, higher national defined contributions and policies agreed along those lines, higher financial commitments. I think from the developed world, I think a major, and that's my memory already from Warsaw, a major sticking point has been lack of trust between developing countries and developed countries like Sweden, because they have sometimes doubted that we, countries like us, will deliver on our commitments. So therefore, I think these kind of commitments made just today by our government to increase now in the run-up to the Glasgow conference, that's really important. Secondly, they're enormous financial needs, as the ambassador pointed out, and it's impossible to move this forward without strong engagement in the private sector. So, and coming back to our experience, we need to mobilize the private sector and make sure that well, both public investment and private investments are redirected to climate sensible investments rather than old technology or whatever would sort of hamper the transition to a green economy. And very much of the funds need to come from the private sector, and many of these companies are actually there and ready to be drivers if they get the right kind of incentives and put in the right kind of policy framework. And finally, I mean, coming back to one of my major points, carbon pricing. I mean, if we don't do anything more on carbon pricing, which is according to all experience, a very effective tool, creating these incentives for private and public sector to act in a climate smart way, then we won't be able to get the progress needed. On the question from the Dutch embassy, areas of cooperation, I think we are still working on this. I think the dialogue, I mean, Sweden being very committed, as the Netherlands very committed members in the European Union, we are very happy to see that this high-level dialogue between European Union and Turkey now is taking place very recently. And I think that provides the overall framework and opportunity for the EU and for countries like us to engage more with Turkey. Then but we have a development cooperation program with Turkey, around 9 million euros per year. It's mainly directed in the area of rule of law, democracy, human rights. We work with civil society, work with multilateral organizations, and I think there it's an important. Climate isn't a sector as such, but certainly climate needs to be addressed. I mean, again, as I said in my introductory speech, we need to mainstream climate and environment through our actions. Additionally, we had this called JETGO. It's a joint economic and trade commission meeting early May. I think, and they're trying to also get our companies together. I sincerely hope that since Swedish companies sort of typically are increasingly focused on environmental sustainability, I hope that there might come actions out of that kind of interaction as well between private sector actors. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much. It was an excellent brief. And of course, we have two ambassadors sitting on this
Could you please introduce yourself? Sorry, now I recognize you.
This is
without
Bozkurt Eren.
the- yes,
I'm from
Bozkurt.
TEPAV and also associated with the top ETÜ University. Maybe I should talk like this. It's wonderful to have a lapse of the meetings after 2 years to start with the climate change, and I should thank both of these, all the institutions that have established, that have provided us with this opportunity. I have two simple questions. One to the Swedish ambassador. That's about what is the proportion of the renewables in energy production in Sweden? And to İlhan too, our good colleague from Turkish Ministry. Now, the Swedish ambassador has underlined the fact that this carbon pricing is one of the main elements to force the climate change, to renew the energy, to the efforts in this regard. And so, is Turkey will be willing to put this emission trading system in practice and in future? Because in 19, if I'm not mistaken, in 23, all the Turkish exports on 5 major items would be exposed to heavy taxes. That's it. Thank you.
Maybe we can collect. Yes, sir, at the back.
Thank you. My name is Jasper Mortimer. I'm a journalist with France 24 Television and Irish Radio. Don't worry, I'm not here to quote, I'm here to learn. 2 questions to Ambassador Tu. Ambassador, has Turkey made a commitment to net zero emissions by 2050, independent of the Paris Accords? Or will it comply, go along with net zero emissions by 2050 only as part of the Paris Accords? Second question, Turkey is right now the only G20 country that hasn't ratified the Paris Accords. I'm sure as an environmental specialist, you're embarrassed about this fact. It has taken 6 years for the Turkish government to give a commitment to ratifying them. I believe that President Erdogan decided to ratify them because he came under increasing pressure from Turkish exporters, saying that they would lose their markets, their customers in Europe, because Europe would not be buying goods from Turkey because its carbon footprint was too big. My question is, can you explain why it has taken Turkey so long to agree to ratify the Paris Accords? Thank you.
Yes, Özgür Bey, questions from the online system.
Özgür Nisacıklı, German Marshall Fund. I have one question for each ambassador. Ambassador Hallström, you have stressed that countries that have contributed most to climate change should act earlier and contribute more climately to the mitigation of climate change. Thank you very much for saying that, and I hope every developed nation has the same policy. But this is justice at the global level. But there is also the issue of justice at national level. Also within our societies, there are certain societal groups that have contributed more to climate change, but then all of societies need to now contribute to its mitigation, basically pay the price. This has created climate polarization in many societies. Is there such a situation in Sweden, a climate polarization? And if so, how has Sweden overcome this polarization and create some sort of consensus in the society for tackling climate change? My question to Ambassador Tu is, while mitigating climate change, even if not reversing in the long run, is very important, we also need to manage the immediate consequences today, not 20 years later. And one of the consequences we see in Turkey's region and within actually Turkey is maybe not drying up of, but let's say, decreasing flow of rivers, and particularly cross-border rivers. The last couple of years has been particularly dry in the region, and we hear criticisms towards Turkey from downstream countries or sharing rivers with Turkey, that Turkey is withholding water from them. What would your response be to this criticism?
Okay, now maybe start from the reverse, Mr. Hirschfeld.
First, the answer on the renewables. Overall, not only electricity, but the whole energy system, 55%, roughly 55% renewables. And to Özgür Bey, I think, first of all, yes, it's obvious that countries that have contributed more and are contributing more to the problem also has a strong responsibility to act for the solution. As I've said, and happy you noted that. Having said that, we also need to look at the situation here and now and in the future, and that makes us, well, we're in this together, so we need to solve it together, which means that certainly there's a huge responsibility not only for historical contributors, but for all of us to address this and to reduce as soon as possible our emissions. In our societies, then, have we seen kind of climate polarization in my country? Not really. One aspect of this, though, that I touched upon briefly before is the transport sector. I mean, people living in less populated parts of the country, which need to drive cars longer and more often, they sometimes feel that they are overtaxed. The solution is not to sort of ease the carbon pricing, but the solution is to address the problems that they face. And as I said, also, you need to have a sort of welfare system in place, which provides social safety nets for the most vulnerable people wherever they live in the country. And secondly, I believe that and coming back to what I said about civil society, I mean, when I was a kid in the 1960s, that was a sort of early days of environmental movement. Rachel Carson's famous book, Silent Spring, and we had the environmental movement sort of starting to becoming more energized. One called Keep Sweden Clean, starting with the waste problem, and I think that has really helped. Both these, the public awareness created by this, the mobilizing effect from civil society, environmental activists, holding politicians, the parties, the decision makers, the private sectors accountable, that has really helped to create a sort of societal awareness that we need to address this. And that then again, people starting to act as customers, saying that, well, I simply don't want to buy paper that is produced with chlorine, or I don't want to see single-use plastics. And if you, private sector companies, if you try to sell that, then I will protest by my feet and my wallet, and I don't want to buy. So, and this sort of creates a political climate, and coming back to that, where most citizens feel that, well, they are actually part and parcel of a societal effort to address climate change. Then we have a lot of debates, as we should, about the measures and the ambitions and the exact timing of these things. But I think we can't overstate the importance of the debate, the scrutiny, the civil society movements for mobilizing, for holding accountable, and for moving the society forward in a reasonably coherent way.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Ambassador Tulu.
Thank you very much. Okay, regarding carbon taxing, to be honest, it is currently being worked on by our respective institutions, and they are preparing a comprehensive plan in light of the recent developments. And so it will become more clearer once after the COP26 meeting. Let's see how things will evolve until then. On the, what was the second question? It was commitment. I can't read my own handwriting, sorry. Commitment. Sorry? Net zero emissions by 2050. Oh, okay, yes, not by 2050, 2053. That will be the net zero emission. That's the pledge. And why is Turkey the only G20 country which hasn't ratified until now? Well, it's well, we didn't ratify it due to the reason that Turkey was placed under, it's a bit technical, this issue. I don't want to dwell too much into it, but when these negotiations first started back in 1992, somehow Turkey was included in Annex 1 and Annex 2 country. Why was Turkey included in Annex 1? Because of its OECD membership. In that period, in Annex 1 countries, they have the obligation for net emission reduction, and also as countries who are included in Annex 2 have the obligation to give financial support to developing countries and the least developed countries. Of course, especially during that time, Turkey was not a developed country. Even today, it's a developing country. So we wanted to find a just solution to that. There are 9 of the G20 countries are not Annex 1 countries. So this is, there's a huge injustice in that regard, while Turkey is among the Annex 1 countries. The other 9 countries are not, and they are G20 countries. So all that time we tried to negotiate with our partners on how to solve this problem. But that doesn't mean that Turkey didn't do anything regarding the fight against climate change. This is very important. And I mean, don't think that Turkey has sat idly and didn't just watch the world fight. No, we are, as I stated in my opening statement, we are a success story in terms of renewables. We have invested billions of dollars from our own pockets to invest in renewables, and our electricity generation from the renewables, the capacity is 53%. The average of the EU countries in that regard is around 40%. So please don't think that Turkey hasn't done anything by not ratifying the Paris Agreement. In any case, hopefully we will ratify it, but of course it's subject to the approval of our assembly. So I don't want to prejudge the negotiations that will be carried out at during the assembly meetings. So that's that. And what was the other question? Flow of rivers, criticism against Turkey. Well, this is a subject which is focused on climate change and what we're doing. Of course, climate change affects everything, including agriculture and water. Scarcity of water is also affecting not only the regional countries, but also Turkey as well. We are not receiving the same amount of water as we used to do before. So naturally, the flow of water might, in some seasonal, because of seasonal changes, there might be some reductions, but overall, on average, the water which flows to our neighboring countries are above the limits that we have agreed upon. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also I just want to state that our neighboring countries, they also have some problems regarding their infrastructure and the efficient use of water resources. Most of the water which flows to them are just flowing to the sea, and we should also take a note of that. We see water as a source of cooperation, and we are cooperating despite the climate change, despite the scarcity of water. We are cooperating with our neighbors, and so I don't understand why they are complaining on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador Tu. Any other questions on the floor? Yes, Caner Bey, please also introduce yourself.
My name is Caner Can. I'm Energy Advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm also proud to say that I am doing my postgraduate studies at the top university at the Department of Political Relations and International Relations and Political Affairs. So I am proud to be a part of this event as a student, also as a member of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And Deputy Director General, His Excellency İlhan Tu, is my also superior. So it is pretty interesting and weird for me to feel this way at my school. I will ask not a technical question, but a professional question. When these two gentlemen joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in their own countries, energy issues, climate change, and environmental affairs was a kind of issue of low politics. Now everybody is waiting for Glasgow and COP26. So it is a top international affairs agenda item. How would you evaluate your personal views, personal experience as a member of diplomatic force, diplomatic team, with this transition as an environment from a low politic issue, now one of the top high politic issue? Thank you. As a diplomat, of course. Thank you.
Quite good question. Actually, some small part of remarks were also made by Mr. Herrström, citing his childhood experience. But now it's good to look from the professional track, like high politics. That's definitely one. Actually, conclusion I got from this meeting, given also the survey results. The world society, the public in each surveyed countries are strongly ready. So the normative structure is there. It is to a large extent put into legal action in many EU member countries, and Turkey took finally this step to do that. But how to do, the means is negotiating right now. So we are like in an interregnum phase. But that's always the breakthroughs in international cooperation. That's how international governance proceeds. And one more conclusion before perhaps giving you some time to think about your personal experience that I got from these great talks, remarks by the distinguished speakers, and great questions by all the audience. Thank you for all your participation. Is a finance issue. And I would like to add my personal remark on this finance, the enormous need to support this energy transition, climate mitigation. Yes, the private sector's role is key. Herrschroeder strongly emphasized that, and it must be demand driven. And since the public is ready, I think the demand is there. But in terms of the purchasing power, I think we may see a variety for the influence of the demand, because in poorer countries or poorer social groups, people may think first their basic needs rather than whether I am buying an environmentally friendly package or not, unless they are all price-based competitive. And the second point about the role of private sector is, as you may all know, right now the global economy has the highest level of debt that has never seen in the world history. So there is already a debt burden of private sector. And in some sectors, like fossil fuel intensive sectors, this debt is a little bit higher. And indeed, unfortunately, in Turkey's energy sector, the private sector is also heavily debted. So while you have such high debt, to put extra finance is like a double-edged sword on this climate change. So I think it should be on the agenda of, in COP26 in Glasgow. So now the floor is yours for your final remarks. Thank you. Mr. Yes, please.
Difficult question. But yes, certainly the climate issue has become dramatically more urgent than when I joined our development agency, SIDA, part of our Foreign Service, 1995. But having said that, I mean, we had the Rio conference already in 1992. We got the convention in place. The Kyoto Protocol was coming in place 1998. And these were issues that we worked rather heavily with within SIDA as tasked by our government. So I felt, and I mean, me personally, I worked a lot with the environment, the pollution of the Baltic Sea. So I had that focus more than climate at the time, though it was also part of our responsibility and cooperation with Central and Eastern Europe. So it wasn't a low priority at that time, but of course we have learned so much more during this time. The IPCC, the science has improved dramatically, and with knowing what we know now, I can definitely say, well, yes, I should have done more, because some of these things that we know now were also a part of the global knowledge already at that time. So yes, I feel I should have done more. I'm happy now to note again on the personal part that I have a daughter who works exactly with climate and environment in our development agency. So, and I'm apart from being ambassador, I try to be inspired by listening to my daughters and what they do and what they perhaps think that I could do more than I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Ambassador too.
Thank you. Actually, this is the most difficult question asked until now. I will talk to you when we get back to the ministry. No, actually, of course, I'm kidding. Yes, I mean, I started this position just 2 years ago, and until then, I personally wasn't that much informed about the climate problem this much. Of course, when I look back, this is my bad, of course, but when I look back throughout, I mean, in the past 30 years since 1992, there were some actions that were taken, the Kyoto Protocol, for instance. However, during those times, we weren't witnessing these harsh meteorological fluctuations in the world. And now it has affected everyone and all over the world. If I'm not mistaken, we even saw snowfall in the desert. There was this phenomena. I remember reading somewhere, and rain is falling in Greenland. So it's really in the forefront of the world's agenda. And hence it has become one of the highest priorities throughout the world because it has started directly affecting our lives. So, of course, I feel privileged that I am witnessing this transition period. I feel especially lucky that I will be witnessing, hopefully, our ratification of the Paris Agreement. It will be a good memory for me to put in my book when I write after I retire, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much again. I think now our time is also due. So thank you all for your participation. It was really an exciting and I think stimulating event. I believe strongly that we also contribute a little bit for public awareness, at least in this policy makers environment and students environments, which are already quite high active on climate change and environmental issues. So thank you very much. Hope to see you in our next events. It was great to be on physically in the same room with, of course, cautiousness about the pandemic rules. Thank you for all. And let me applaud the distinguished speakers once again.